Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he was a successful man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all he did to prosper in his hand.
That's pretty commendable on Potiphar's part. He recognized that God blessed Joseph, right? And he knows that Joseph had a different God than he did and the rest of Egypt. So that means he recognized the existence of another God that's not Egyptian. That's a big deal. Or was it the culture back then where they believed that everybody had their own gods and they all existed? And certain cultures worshipped their gods. I don't know. That could be the case too. If not, I mean, that's a big deal that he recognized Joseph's God, right? Yeah, that's a big deal.
So Joseph found favor in his sight and served him. Then he made him overseer of his house, and all that he had he put under his authority. So it was, from the time that he made him an overseer of his house and all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in the house and in the field. Thus he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he did not know what he had, except for the bread which he ate. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance.
That entire family was apparently. And it came to pass,
after these things, that his master's wife cast longing eyes on Joseph.
Lie with me.
But he refused.
Look, my master does not know what is with me in the house, and he has committed all that he has to my hand. There is no one greater in this house than I, nor has he kept back anything from me. But you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?
So it was, as she...
Do you think Joseph would have laid with her if she wasn't married? Because we've seen a few examples of them, people in his family laying with women out of wedlock. So I'm curious how strict they were with that, you know? Yeah.
She spoke to Joseph day by day that he did not heed her, to lie with her or to be with her. But it happened about this time, when Joseph went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house was inside, that she caught him by his garment.
Lie with me.
But he left his garment in her hand, and fled and ran outside. And so it was, when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and fled outside, that she called to the men of her house and spoke to them.
See, he has brought into us a Hebrew to mock us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. And it happened when he heard that I lifted my voice and cried out that he left.
What does that mean? She said, see, he has brought into us a Hebrew to mock us. He came in to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. Is she talking about her husband? He brought into us a Hebrew to mock us. So she's saying her husband brought into us a Hebrew to mock us? Let's see what this Bible has to say. 39:14. She insulted her husband in front of other slaves. The term Hebrew is used 4 times in the book of Genesis. Here it is a racial slur. Makes sense. That makes sense to me.
His garment with me and fled and went outside.
As a hashtag me too.
So she kept his garment with her until his master came home. Then she spoke to him with words like these.
The Hebrew servant whom you brought to us came
This
in.
lady framed Joseph for these immoral deeds, talking bad about her husband behind her back, and then now is tattletaling.
To me to mock me. So it happened as I lifted my voice and cried out that he left his garment with me and fled outside.
So it was, when his master heard the words which his wife spoke to him,
Your servant did to me after this manner.
that his
See, so she's trying to blame Potiphar also. Look, it's your servant, the guy you brought in here. My gosh. Did Egyptians divorce? Because I mean, I don't condone divorce, but I'm just kidding.
anger was aroused. Then Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, a place where the king's prisoners were confined. And he was there in the prison.
King.
But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him mercy, and he gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners who were in the prison. Whatever they did there, it was his doing. The keeper of the prison did not look into anything that was under Joseph's authority, because
Wow,
the
okay,
Lord
so he
was with
completely
him.
trusted Joseph.
And whatever he did, the Lord made it prosper.
Good. Alright, that's the end of 39. Chapter 40.
It came to pass after these things that the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was angry with his two officers, the chief butler and the chief baker. So he put them in custody in the house of...
Ah, it's different than Prince of Egypt. They were already in prison in that movie, but looks like Joseph was there first.
the captain of the guard,
And then they
in the
got-
prison, the place where Joseph was confined.
Okay, so Joseph was already in charge and everything.
And the captain of the guard charged Joseph with
Not
them.
Prince of Egypt.
And he
What's the Joseph one called? Something of dreams? King of dreams? Prince of dreams? I don't know, something like that.
served them. So they were in custody for a while. Then the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison, had a dream. Both of them, each man's dream in one night, and each man's dream with its own interpretation. And Joseph came into them in the morning and looked at them, and saw
Bad phraseology there, Moses. He what into them? He came into them. I mean, they've been using that phrase for something else this whole time.
that they were sad. So he asked Pharaoh's officers, who were with him in the custody of his lord's house,
Why do you look so sad today?
We each have had a dream, and there is no interpreter of it.
Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell them to me, please.
Then the chief butler told his dream to Joseph.
Behold, in my dream a vine was before me, and in the vine were 3 branches. It was as though it budded, its blossoms shot forth, and its clusters brought forth ripe grapes. Then Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand.
This is the interpretation of it.
What is it?
The 3 branches are 3 days. Now within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your place, and you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand according to the former manner when you were his butler. But remember me when it is well with you, and please show kindness to me. Make mention of me to Pharaoh, and get me out of this house. For indeed I was stolen away from the land of the Hebrews, and also I have done nothing here that they should put me into the dungeon.
When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, he said to Joseph,
I also was in my dream, and there were 3 white baskets on my head. In the uppermost basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, and the birds ate them out of the basket on my head.
This is the interpretation of it. The 3
How could that
baskets
be a good,
are 3 days.
a good dream, man?
Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head from you and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat your flesh from you.
Oh, man.
Now it came to pass on the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast for all his servants. And he lifted up the head of the chief butler and of the chief baker among his servants. Then he restored the chief butler to his butlership again, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker, as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief butler did not remember Joseph, but forgot him.
Oh, okay. So why do you think God gave these 2 those dreams? Right? God would have to have given them those dreams, right? Because they're way too specific and clear. They're not like dreams, they're like visions that needed interpretation, because it literally, those things happened, right? And then Joseph came and interpreted them, right? So it was like they were perfectly placed, right? So Joseph was there to interpret those dreams. I mean, you could say maybe the reason why that God gave them those dreams was so that Joseph could interpret them, and when they got out, or when one of them got out, he would tell Pharaoh. But it looks like the chief butler did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. So what was the point in that? Was it to give Joseph confidence in his connection with God, knowing that he can do something like this, because he knows that Joseph is going to need to with the Pharaoh soon? Maybe. 41. Yeah, that could be it. God gave Joseph a little practice run.
Then it came to pass, at the end of 2 full years, that Pharaoh had a dream. And behold, he stood by the river. Suddenly there came up out of the river 7 cows, fine-looking and fat, and they fed in the meadow. Then behold, 7 other cows came up after them out of the river, ugly and gaunt, and stood by the other cows on the bank of the river. And the ugly and gaunt cows ate up the 7 fine-looking and fat cows.
Man, this audio, holy.
So Pharaoh awoke. He slept and dreamed a second time. And suddenly 7 heads of grain came up on one stalk, plump and good. Then behold, 7 thin heads, blighted by the east wind, sprang up after them. And the 7 thin heads devoured the 7 plump and full heads. So Pharaoh awoke, and indeed it was a dream. Now it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men. And Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was no one who could interpret them for Pharaoh. Then the chief butler spoke to Pharaoh.
There we go.
Remember my faults
That's
this
the
day.
reason why.
When Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, both me and the chief baker, we each had a dream in one night, he and I. Each of us dreamed according to the interpretation of his own dream. Now there was a young Hebrew man with us there, a servant of the captain of the guard. And we told him, and he interpreted our dreams for us To each man he interpreted according to his own dream. And it came to pass, just as he interpreted for us, so it happened. He restored me to my office, and he hanged him.
Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him quickly out of the
Are
dungeon.
they not allowed to address the Pharaoh by name or by title or by anything? Right? Like he says, and he restored me to my office, and he hanged him. Right? Like they're not referring to Pharaoh by name or title or anything like that. That's interesting.
And he shaved, changed his clothing, and came to Pharaoh. And
All right,
Pharaoh
Joseph.
said to Joseph,
I have had a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. But I have heard it said of you that you can understand a dream, to interpret it.
So Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying,
It is not in me. God will give Pharaoh an answer of peace.
Behold, in my dream I stood on the bank of the river. Suddenly 7 cows came up out of the river, fine-looking and fat, and they fed in the meadow. Then behold, 7 other cows came up after them, poor and very ugly and gaunt, such ugliness as I have never seen in all the land of Egypt.
Some ugly cows.
And the gaunt and ugly cows ate up the first 7, the fat cows. When they had eaten them up, no one would have known that they had eaten them, for they were just as ugly as at the beginning. So I awoke. Also I saw in my dream, and suddenly 7 heads came
Pharaoh's body shaming these cows just because they're so skinny. He's calling them ugly.
up on one stalk, full and good. Then behold, 7 heads, withered, thin, and blighted by the east wind, sprang up after them. And the thin heads devoured the 7 good heads. So I told this to the magicians, but there was no one who could explain it to me.
The dreams of Pharaoh are one. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads are 7 years. The dreams are one. And the 7 thin and ugly cows which came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty heads blighted by the east wind are 7 years of famine. This is the thing which I have spoken to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. Indeed, 7 years of great plenty will come throughout all the land of Egypt. But after them, 7 years of famine will arise, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine will deplete the land. So the plenty will not be known in the land because of the famine following, for it will be very severe. And the dream was repeated to Pharaoh twice, because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. Now, therefore, let Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land to collect 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt in the 7 plentiful years. And let them gather all the food of those good years that are coming, and store up grain under the authority of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. Then that food shall be as a reserve for the land for the 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land may not perish during the famine.
So the advice was good in the eyes.
Do you think Joseph knew that when he was saying all that and he recommended having a wise man take lead and do all these things, that Pharaoh is going to be like, all right, we'll hire you? I feel like a part of him probably, I don't know.
Eyes of Pharaoh,
What do you guys
and in
think?
the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants,
Can we find such a one as this, a man in whom is the Spirit of God?
Then Pharaoh said to Joseph,
Inasmuch as God has shown you all this, there is no one as discerning and wise as you. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall be ruled according to your word. Only in regard to the throne will I be greater than you. See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt.
Then Pharaoh took his signet ring off his hand and put it on Joseph's hand. And he clothed him in garments of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. And he had him ride in the second chariot which he had. And they cried out before him,
Bow the knee!
So he set him over all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh also said to Joseph,
I am Pharaoh, and without your consent no man may lift his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt.
That's crazy. That's a lot of trust and faith you're putting into Joseph with having just one conversation with him.
And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphnath-Paaneah, and he gave him as a wife Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On. So Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt.
30 years, that's not bad at all.
Now, in the 7 plentiful years, the ground brought forth abundantly. So he gathered up all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Egypt, and laid up the food in the cities. He laid up in every city the food of the fields which surrounded them. Joseph gathered very much grain, as the sand of the sea, until he stopped counting, for it was immeasurable. And to Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of famine came, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, bore to him. Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh.
For God has made me forget all my toil and all my father's house.
And the name of the second he called
What is Esther's name? Hanassah? Something like that, right?
Ephraim.
For God has caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction.
Then the 7 years of plenty which were in the land of Egypt.
For God has made me forget all my toil and all my father. And for God has made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. And the second son, for God has caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. Okay, but what does this first name mean? For God has made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. I understand this. Forget all my toil, right? Working as a slave of Potiphar and being in prison, but then he forgot all his father's house. For God has caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction.
Egypt ended.
So this is the land of his affliction. So why would he forget his father's house? I don't know.
And the 7 years of famine began.
Does this Bible have an explanation? Or like, I doubt it. That's sort of, that's not like a in-your-face type of sort of nuanced, but let's see. 41:51. Yeah, no, it doesn't have anything.
And to come, as Joseph had said. The famine was in all lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. So when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. Then Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians,
Go to Joseph. Whatever he says to you, do.
The famine was over all the face of the earth, And Joseph opened all the
All the earth?
storehouses and sold to the Egyptians. And the famine became severe in the land of Egypt.
All the earth?
So all
56. And it's the same guy, Moses, wrote the story of Noah. So he knows what all the earth means. 41, 56. Joseph enriched the treasury of the Pharaoh by selling grain to the Egyptians. All countries means the whole known world came to Egypt to buy grain, just as Joseph had testified to Egypt concerning the reality of the true God. So now he was able to testify to all nations. Yeah, but what does it mean by the whole earth? Let's look that up after this.
all countries came to Joseph in Egypt to buy grain, because the famine was severe in all lands.
The famine was all over the face of the earth. The famine was all over the face of the earth. Oh, no, it's just the Bible. No, it's just the Bible too. Oh, this is a list of every time the Bible says face of the earth. All right, Genesis, that makes sense. Creation. Okay. Flood, all the face of the earth. Okay. Right, because we believe the flood was worldwide, right? So it was named Babel because there the Lord took away the sense of all languages, and from there the Lord sent them away all over the face of the earth. And we know people live all over the face of the earth today, so. What is this? What is this? Oh, I guess when we get to Exodus, that'll be explained. But what is I'm not getting any explanation. Do you guys know? What does it mean by all over the face of the earth? When famine, okay, well, let's see a different translation. A literal translation. And the famine was on the face of all the land, and Joseph opened all which was in them, and sold to the Egyptians, blah, 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 blah. So all the land, all the earth, like not the earth, but just like the ground earth. And the famine, American Standard Version, right? That's the most literal translation, right? The American Standard Version. Why is there two? Let's go with this one, I guess. And the famine was all over the face of the earth. Oh, okay. And Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold unto the Egyptians, and the famine was sore in the land of Egypt. What is in the whatever? What do you guys think? Do you think that means that the famine was across the entire earth, or was it localized in that area, in the known earth? And if you think it is localized in that area in the known earth, does that affect Noah's story regarding a worldwide flood, or was that flood localized to that area as well? Let me know what you guys think, because that's an important question. I can't, let's see, explained. Let's see one of these, Matthew Henry's commentary. There was a famine of the bread of life throughout the whole earth. The bread of life. And the famine was all over the face of the earth. Not the whole world, but the land of Egypt, and all the inhabitants of it were pinched with it, rich and poor. All right, but then how does that affect Noah's story? And the famine was over all the face of the earth, and Joseph opened the storehouses and sold, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, what do you guys think? I want to know what you guys think. If it's literally all over the face of the earth, then using that same phrase, right, with Noah's flood was a worldwide flood. But if this is localized in only Egypt, does that mean Noah's flood could have been localized in that area only? Let me know. That's a pretty interesting question to ask. Yeah, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. And I'll see you guys tomorrow for Genesis chapter 42. Hope you have a nice day. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.